Okay. An increase in which of the following is most likely to promote economic growth? All right. Whenever you see economic growth, you got to think long run. All right. Long run economic growth. And like for now, I think the best thing to do is think production possibilities curve. All right. So when I'm looking at that, consumption spending shifts to AD to the right. But I think like when we thought about the production possibilities curve, we'd always think consumption is not long run economic growth, more in capital goods. Now, so the answer ends up being B as in broccoli, investment tax credits. Now, what is that? That's when businesses invest. So investment, again, in economics, capital goods, equipment, factories, you get a tax credit, meaning say you invest $100,000 in capital goods, in equipment, in building new factories, in building, you then get a tax discount. So you could take that off your taxes, therefore you're paying less taxes. So it's an incentive to invest more. So anytime you see investment, capital goods is always about economic growth. Now, real interest rates, let's look at that. If interest rates go up, we know that if interest rates go up, companies aren't going to want to borrow, investment goes down, aggregate demand shifts left. An increase in the trade deficit would be a decrease in net exports. That would shift AD to the left. An increase of the natural rate of unemployment, that would just have more people being unemployed, more frictional and structural unemployed. Excuse me. That's not going to promote economic growth. So B as in broccoli is the answer. All right, Ben, if you could do the prayer. Okay. So you should be reading tonight, 7:39 to 7:45, Thursday, 46 to 53. Friday, your notes are due on the chapter of aggregate demand and aggregate supply and monetary and fiscal policy. We will have a review Monday night at 7:45 a.m., the p.m. rather. The quiz is on Tuesday, and we'll have a review at 7:45 a.m. for the quiz on Tuesday. The quiz will only be on aggregate supply and aggregate demand, the chapter that was due yesterday. All right. Today, we're going to do some practice problems, all right, to try to strengthen us on long and short run, inflationary/expansionary gaps and recessionary gaps, and how to shift from the short to long run. And then we're going to look at classical versus Keynes approach and talk about how government can get involved. So far, we've just have allowed ourselves to go from the short to the long run, but later today we'll look at government involvement. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute. If you just pause this tape and give everyone a minute to read this, and then I will come back and give you an explanation. I'll read the question, and then, like I said, take a minute, pause the tape, and then you could come back for the explanation. According to the graph above, which of the following is true about the long-run equilibrium of the economy depicted? All right, when we do these questions, it is extremely important to underline, are they asking about long or short run? So I've underlined the long run. I'm going to give you a minute, and then I'll come back. Okay. What do we have here? Okay. We have, we started out, probably at, somewhere around here. We're now at A here, and we have what we would call, right, an expansionary or an inflationary gap. Anything to the right of the long run aggregate supply is going to be called an inflationary or expansionary. They could use either term. All right. So I'm at A, and I'm going to ask the questions I always ask. At A, am I making more or less product than the LRAS? Jack McGregor, what do you think? You're right, more product. If I'm making more product, do I need more or less workers? Ben Dawes, what do you think? You're right, more workers. If I need more workers when contracts expire and I go to the long run, am I going to have to increase or decrease wages? I'm going to have to increase wages because I need more workers. So I'm going to have higher wages to attract them. Wages, as we know, is an SRAS shifter, right? Because it's a resource. Wages are a resource. Wages increase, companies make less money, therefore they're going to supply less. So it's going to be, and sorry, because that is probably not the best drawn line. There is your SRAS. All right. So it's going to be E as an L, and as wages increase, the short run aggregate supply curve will shift left to restore the long run equilibrium. All right. Again, you're shifting left because you had more output, you needed more workers. You then had to increase wages, which shifted SRAS to the left. All right. If there's any questions, I am sure Mr. Prescott will clarify that for you. All right, let's go to the next. Again, I will read this and then give you a minute to think about it, and then I'll come back with the answer. An economy is in the short run equilibrium at a level of output that is less than full employment. All right, so output is less than full employment. If there was no fiscal or monetary policy interventions, all right, that's just what we've been doing, left on your own, which of the following changes in output and price level would occur in the long run? All right, so the factors we have to think about here is the level of output is less than full employment. So you're going to have to graph that. And then they want to know what's going to happen to output and price level when you go from the short run to the long run. Give you a minute to think about that. Okay, I am back. I hope you paused the video. If not, pause it now and give people time. Okay. If an economy is at the short run equilibrium at a level of output that is less than full employment, the economy is going to look like that. Okay. It's going to be a recessionary gap. Remember, anything to the left of the LRAS is a recessionary gap. Okay. So we're going to be in the recessionary gap. Now they're asking you what's going to happen to price and output in the long run. Well, I'm at Q1, and the first thing I'd ask Donovan Lewis is, am I making more or less product than QP? All right, Donna, you're right. Less product. All right. Then I'm going to ask Jackson, if I'm making less product, do I need more or less workers? You're right, less workers. Jack Kerr, if I need less workers, am I going to have to pay them more or less wages when contract expires? Jack, you're right, less wages. All right, so notice, less output, less workers, less wages. Wages, we know, is a shifter of the short run aggregate supply curve because of RAP, resource prices, which is wages, okay? And since wages are lower, companies are going to make more money, so they're going to want to supply more. So SRAS is going to shift to the right. Okay. Now, compared to P1, price levels are down and output has increased, right? Compared to P1, price levels are down and output has increased. Let's go back and check the question. An economy in the short run is a level. All right, we did that. There's which of the following changes in output and price? All right, so we're going to have an increase of output and a decrease in price level, right? An increase in output from Q1 back to QP and a decrease in price level. Okay. All right. Let's try another. Okay. Again, pause after I read this for a minute. A simultaneous increase in inflation and unemployment would be explained by an increase in which of the following? I'll give you a minute and then I'll come back. Okay. Right away, the good Lochte is thinking inflation and unemployment, if they both increase, hold it. What do I call that? Yeah, that's stagflation. That's stagflation, right? Stagflation is an increase in inflation, high unemployment, and low productivity. Okay. What is stagflation again? It's a leftward supply shift. All right. So let's look. I got to look for a leftward supply shift. Increase in consumer spending, that's consumption, aggregate demand, and that's going to shift aggregate demand, right? We haven't learned about an increase in the money supply, but if people buy more, have more money, they're going to consume more, aggregate demand to the right. An increase in labor productivity, that's the P in RAP. That is going to shift short-run aggregate supply, but to the right. Investment spending, that's aggregate demand, consumption, investment, government spending, and net export. That's aggregate demand to the right. I'm left with E. Now, inflationary expectations. So if people know there's going to be inflation, workers are then going to try to bargain to get higher wages, which shifts SRAS to the left. And then if you see SRAS to the left, there you see higher unemployment, right? Remember, it's real GDP, employment, and income go in the same direction. Employment down, unemployment up. All right, so employment is decreasing, so unemployment is up. And you can even think of it as output's decreasing, I need less workers, unemployment up. Okay, and by the way, anything to the left is also cyclical unemployment if we're thinking that way. And notice inflation, wages are up. Okay, so E got you an increase in inflation and an increase in unemployment. And remember again, that is stagflation, or sometimes called cost push inflation, because the increase in cost pushes the prices up. All right. All right, I'm going to give you a quick review and what the economic boom, that would be like optimism, that they're almost the same. That just psychologically gets people to think things are going to go good, things are going well, people are going to consume more, spend more, they're anticipating raises, businesses are probably anticipating more business, so they'll do more investment, aggregate demand shifts right. Pessimism, the opposite. Pessimism, things are going bad. All right. I might be laid off my job. I'm going to spend less. Businesses are definitely going to invest less because they're worried that, like, it's a recession. People are going to lose their jobs. people are going to buy less. Wage increase or decrease is an SRA shifter. Right? Wage increase shifts SRAS to the left. I will guarantee you there's a question on your unit test about wage increase. I will guarantee you, even though I say it now, it is an SRAS shift to the left, that a lot of people get it wrong. Wages are on the worker, all right? Now, an income increase or decrease is aggregate demand, and it's about consumption. If my income increases or decreases, I either have more money to spend as a consumer or less money to spend. Wages and income are different. As I've said in the class, and I'll say it again, I could raise the wages up, but fire half the class. And therefore, even though wages increase, income decreases. Remember, this is the aggregate. We're looking at wages throughout the country. We're looking at income throughout the country. So wage is an SRAS shifter. Income is an aggregate demand shifter. Economic boom, pessimism, and optimism, aggregate demand. Economic boom and optimism, aggregate demand to the right, pessimism, aggregate demand to the left. All right, we're about now to go to your review sheet. You can put the boards away. All right, get your review sheet out and do the best you can in keeping up. Now, we would normally have a discussion. Should you think government should get involved? When we've been going from the short to the long run, we've just been waiting for things to take care of themselves. But like as Hoover found out in the recession or the Great Depression, sometimes it takes longer than people have the patience or the wherewithal for. So the question is, should government get involved? Should have government got involved during COVID when a lot of people were out of work? Should government have gotten involved in the recession of 2008? And there are positives and negatives for each argument. We're going to look at two thoughts. The classical, which is classical thoughts, Adam Smith, and the Keynes. And Keynes really develops his philosophy after the Great Depression of 1929. All right, so classical theory is a change in aggregate demand will not change output, even in the short run. Because the classical think prices of resources are very flexible. Now, we've been learning, right, that wages and resources, we call them sticky. But here, classical thinks they're flexible. So that is their aggregate supply, and there is their aggregate demand. What the classical economists say is that in a recession, aggregate demand shifts lower, and there's a temporary fall in aggregate demand. But notice what happens to price level. Price level goes down. So classical economists would say price level falls. Now people are buying the same, have the opportunity to buy the same type of good at a lower price. There's an incentive to buy, and therefore the economy will fix itself with no government involvement. All right. So the key to the classical theory is they really don't believe in government involvement because a downward shift in aggregate demand is going to lower prices, give consumers an incentive to buy, and therefore the economy will fix itself. Keynes, however, says the long run is a misleading guide to current affairs. In the long run, we'll all be dead. All right. Economists set themselves too easy, too useless of a task. In tempestuous seasons, they can only tell us what when the storm is past, the ocean is flat again. In time of need, economists need to do more than say the economy will fix itself. Keynes suggests that economists have to come up with policies like deficit spending to help fix the economy. So Keynes' two big approaches is changing or lowering taxes. All right, we know lowering taxes, personal income taxes, gives consumers more money, AD to the right. No new learning there. Or government spending. Those are his two things. Government spending, AD, because why? Consumption, investment, net export, AD to the right. So Keynes's two theories are no new learning. It's a change in taxes or a change in government spending. Both we know what to do with. Now, here's Keynes' theory. A decrease in aggregate demand will lead to a persistent recession because prices of resources are not flexible. He says they're sticky. An increase in aggregate demand during a recession doesn't cause inflation. Now, Keynes came up with the Keynes curve, which is like this. So Keynes would say in a recession, aggregate demand shifts there. Notice, according to Keynes, there is no change in price level. All right, sticky wages prevents wages from falling. All right, and there you are. So people don't have the incentive to buy, and you could stay there for a while. But I mean, like he said, in the long run, we'll all be dead. So Keynes' approach would be to lower taxes. That gives people more money in their pocket. Consumption increases, AD to the right, to help fix the problem. Or government spending, again, AD to the right, to fix the problem. Okay? And there is his AD to the right. And notice he would say it's not going to cause inflation. All right? Because you're going to stay there. And the only time inflation really occurs, according to Keynes, is when you get past that full employment part. All right? And then you're kind of out of the recession or the depression. All right. Now I'm going to show you, because Keynes, he broke his curve into three parts: the Keynes range, the intermediate range, and the classical range. All right. The only time you'll need this really is if they said in the Keynes range, aggregate demand shifts like left, what happens? Well, if aggregate demand shifts left, price levels stay up. So the Keynes range is the horizontal. The intermediate is kind of curving upward, and the classical is the perfectly inelastic, all right, range. All right, check out your boards again. Let's do some boards. Couple of quick reviews. According to Keynes' theory, decreasing taxes and increasing government spending most likely change consumption, expenditures, and unemployment in which of the following ways? I'll give you a minute and then come on back. Okay. Right. Decreasing taxes, what does that do? That gives people more money in their pockets, so they consume more. Increasing government spending, that's AD to the right for both of these. So consumption's going to increase. Now let's take a look if AD goes to the right. All right. And I'm going to just shift AD to the right here to fix my recessionary gap. There is AD to the right. So consumption increased. We went from Q1 to QP. And employment, right? Making more product at QP, so I need more workers. So employment increased. Remember, real GDP, employment, all move in the same direction. So real GDP increased from Q1 to QP, employment increased, income increased. All right. So again, if we now take a second and go back to that question. All right. Decrease in taxes, increased consumption, decreased unemployment. All right. And there would be, you had your recessionary gap. You, again, increased government spending, so you shift AD to the right. You also, by decreasing taxes, are going to shift AD to the right, and you're going to fix your recessionary gap. That's the Keynes theory, all right? Shifting AD to fix economic problems. Let's try another. Which of the following is a basic tenet of classical economic analysis? I'll give you 45 seconds, and I'll come back with an answer. Okay. Classical believes the economy is self-correcting, that you're going to have an AD shift lower, and all that's going to do is lower prices. Okay, one more. An increase. Oh, we did this one yesterday, so I'm going to skip it. And I think we did this one yesterday. But let's do this one again. An increase in personal income taxes will most likely cause aggregate demand and aggregate supply to change in which of the following ways? Give you a minute. Okay. An increase in income tax, I have less money in my pocket, therefore I could consume less. Consumption is an aggregate demand shifter. AD is going to shift, and it's going to decrease. Nothing to do with aggregate supply, so we're not going to have a change there. All right, we will start tomorrow with the car analogy. I appreciate your patience in watching this, and have a great day.